Hello, happy Wednesday. I hope wherever you are that you and your loved ones are safe and well, that you're having a good week and a good day. I've got a lot to tell you this week, so I'm going to get right into it. The procedure. The procedure last week was interesting. Why? I will tell you. They get you started. You're on your stomach. You're kind of strapped down. Your legs are strapped down because they don't want you moving around. And the person who did it, under the direction of my doctor, she was one of the fellows at the hospital. And I have to tell you, it was the least painful start to a procedure I have ever had. And I would say the least painful overall, which is saying a lot because they're normally very uncomfortable. When you're, especially with CRPS patients, what might not be so traumatic or dramatic to the average person is extremely dramatic for us because our nervous systems are sort of sensitized the wrong way, I guess. And so like you stub your toe, yeah, it hurts. It might hurt for a little while. We stub our toe, it could set off a flare that jumps up our whole leg. You know what I mean? So we have to be pretty careful. So injectable, like needles, things like that, IVs, we have to be careful. And we might have like limb guard, like you can't do it on this side because that's the worst side. And so because my CRPS began in terms of my arms on my left side first, I don't even let them do blood pressures on my left side, but I do have it on my right side, but it's my best vein is here, so I have to let them do it there. But for this one, the injection is obviously my back, and it did take them, once they got everything anesthetized, it did take them a while to get the lead in because there's so much inflammation there. And at one point, oh, by the way, when I asked him, does it look worse than, because of all the fluid feeling and everything else, he said there's obviously a lot of blood flow there. There's a lot of inflammation, but it wasn't so dramatic that they were like, oh, they had to intervene in some way. He said it was about what he expected. So that made me feel better. But at one point, you're on your stomach. I start to feel this sensation of the medication going down my right leg. So I mentioned that. I said, it feels like it's going down my leg. And my right shin felt kind of cold and numb, and it was uncomfortable. And I told them that, and they said, oh, we're not really near anything that would cause that. So I was like, what? So then my doctor said, pull back a little bit. So they pulled back and stopped injecting the medication. And he said, how does it feel now? I said, it's getting less. And so then he was like, oh, okay. So then they finished the procedure, and I was thinking, but, okay, wait. You pull the needle back, stop injecting, and the sensation goes away, but it's not because of what you're doing. Okay, whatever. So they finished the procedure, and I have to say, the fellow called me before I was even home, and that was an interesting trip in and of itself, but she called me like 40 minutes after the procedure to check on my leg and to check on me, and then she called me later in the day. So I was like, that was impressive. That was kind. You didn't have to do that, but it was the right thing to do, but whatever. And she said to watch the leg over the weekend and whatever, and it's doing better now. But it was almost like the time, I mean, I love when people are directly doing something that affects part of you, and they're like, no, it's not because of that. It's obviously something else. What other something else is happening? And like, I remember when I had the morphine pump, I had it for almost 7 years. Like a month after the morphine was started, it was morphine and lidocaine, I think. My cycles completely stopped. And they remained stopped until a month after the morphine was stopped. But everybody told me it was obviously something else. Really? Because the only thing that changed in that scenario was morphine and lidocaine. And I was like, okay. And I told my GYN that, and she was like, idiots. And it was so funny because she was just like, come on. She goes, it's not a typical thing. But obviously that's what caused it. I mean, I was thrilled for 6.5 years, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. What else do I have to tell you? The Swifter to Sleep Challenge is done, but I got second place in terms of the prizes, which I was very excited about. It was such an interesting experience for me because I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about my CRPS. And I met the most extraordinary group of people who I hope I cross paths with again. If you're watching this, I definitely want to stay connected to all of you. Our leader, Justine, is just the most extraordinary human being. Her CRPS story is incredible. And just in general, her journey to get to this moment is incredible. And you realize when you meet people that have been living with chronic illness, chronic pain, you realize how extraordinary people can be and what they go through and what they survive through. And I know my own story it kind of blows my mind sometimes when I think about my journey from there to now. It's like it happened to 10 people, but it didn't. It happened to me. But these people, like, it was nice to be in a group of people. It was very positive, very supportive. We talked about the struggles we had, but it was very much a boosting each other up to get to this moment. And it was such a nice experience. And I'm sorry it's over because it was just a nice experience. But my big takeaways were I had become so accepting of the bad things that have happened that I live with every day as something that couldn't be changed. That this is just what is. This is where we are. This is what I'm stuck with. And there are some truths to that with some of the things. But I just accepted, like I said last week, that I was just never going to sleep again. Well, I was going to sleep barely. And that's not true. And so Justine, you'd be very proud of me. I went to bed. I was in bed by 3:30 last night. And that was hard for me. But I did it. And moving my bedtime up from between 4 and 7 in the morning to 3:30, it might not seem like a lot for other people, but that was a big deal for me. Because there's so much happening, and I just have learned I'm learning. I have not completed my learning, to trust the process and trust my brain and trust what I'm going through and trust that I'm doing the right thing by going into bed and just, it's a whole complicated thing, but I'm so grateful for that wake up moment because I would have gone forever not imagining that I had control in that situation. And that's not true. There is so much about my situation. There is so much about the rocks in my backpack that I will carry for the rest of my life. And some of them will become more difficult to carry because they're not going anywhere. They're getting worse as I get older. And my disease is not going away. My spine is not going to spontaneously repair itself. So it's like there are things that I will take with me. The boulders will get heavier and I will have them forever. And I've accepted that. But there are things that have come along with my disease processes that are the side effects of these other things that I just sort of accepted as this is just where I am. This is what happened and that's the way it's going to be. That's not true. Is not true, and that is an unfair thing to do to myself, but I didn't imagine any other thing. Like I couldn't accept that they could be changed. And like I just want you to remember, for anybody dealing with a chronic health issue, there are definitely things you will never be able to change. You will not be able to change your diagnosis. You will not be able to change the effect it has on your body for the most part. Maybe that's not true, but like you can't fix your nervous system. That's what I mean. Like I can't fix my spine. I can't un-arachnoiditis my spine. And I can't undo the damage that CRPS has done to my body, whether you can see it or not. I can't fix that. What I can fix is my response to some of the extras that have come along with it. My lack of sleep, my fear of sleep, my fear of getting into bed, the pain in my leg and like the body scanning and the meditation techniques and breathing and remembering that I don't have to panic about going to bed every night. And so I want you, if you're dealing with a health issue, there are some rocks in your backpack you're going to take with you forever. But there are some that you have to assess, like, wait a minute, I can change what I'm eating. I can change my activity sometimes during the day. I can switch a few things around. I can take back control. I'm dealing with this. When I thought about the math on that, I'm dealing with health issues for almost 25, well, for longer than that, but officially for 25 years this summer. That blew my mind. So you become pretty like steady in what you accept after 25 years. You're just sort of like, it's just what it is. No, it's not. No, it's not. Don't get stuck down that rabbit hole, because it's very hard to pull yourself out unless you have Justine to come in and be like, wait a minute, here's a rope. Let me help you pull yourself out. And then I'm going to teach you things to make you feel more in control of your situation. So that it's just, don't accept everything as law in your medical life, really, because I think I just got really, it's just what is. And I can't believe I did that to myself. But, well, I didn't do that to myself. My health did that to me. And I just sort of accepted, like, well, what can I do to change it? A lot. Anyway, examine your own situations and see, are there rocks in my backpack that I can take out that aren't like, they don't have to be with me for the rest of my life? Or maybe I can whittle them down to just be rocks instead of boulders. You know what I mean? It's like everybody's situation is different, but don't just automatically accept that it's just going to be the way it is for the rest of your life, because that's not true. Not necessarily. Anyway, last thing I want to talk about were the plants. Okay, so last week, I did this on Friday, and then I was like, no, I got to talk about this Wednesday. I can't talk about this now. I had told you guys about the oak variety sprouts that appeared in our planters. And one night I was on Facebook and I was going through my friend messages, and all of a sudden I see a post from one of my classmates about his basil plant. And I remembered, wait a minute, him and his wife and kids, they've got a legit garden. He is a legit gardener. They are. And so I was like, I am going to message him about this. And so I sent him the pictures of the plants. And I told him we found out they were oak variety. And he messages me back and he says, get them out. I think I told you that. He said, you got sneaky acorns in there. So I was like, okay, sneaky. And I didn't think that was true. Let me tell you. Not only was it true, there are 3 of them, because I had 3 sprouts. And so I was like, I pulled the littlest one out first. And what am I looking at? I thought it was a root. It was an acorn. And I was like, are you kidding me? So then I'm like, what the? So then I got really nervous. So I'm like, okay, crap. So we've got 3 oak trees growing in our planters, basically. So I put that one down. I go to pull the bigger one out. And it's an acorn with a giant root situation happening. And I was like, I literally stood there for about 2 minutes staring at this thing like, I can't believe there was an actual acorns. Because my husband and I were like, nah, that's not, it's going to be something else. I'm like, okay, whatever. It was an acorn. So the other one is in its own pot. So I was like, you know what? This is not a sustainable situation. We're not going to be able to continue to grow an oak tree. But I was like, I kind of want to see what happens. So I repotted them in a bigger pot. And I left the 3rd one alone because it wasn't hurting any of the other plants. And I was like, oh my gosh. So now the other 2 that I replanted don't look so great, but I'm like, you weren't going to make it anyway. So I'm kind of tempted just to pull it out and show you guys. But the 3rd one seems to be doing something. So now I don't know what we're going to do with that, because we cannot grow oak trees in the apartment. That's just not going to work. And Dragonaut, the magnificent plant, looks better than ever. So I think he's happy that we got rid of the interlopers. But we were trying to figure out, was it a bird that planted them or squirrels? Because it's both are possible. But it was so neatly done. That's what's so funny to me. It's like, I'm imagining like, but then I thought, imagine like the squirrel comes back looking for his little stash or her little stash, and the planters are gone. And the plants are like, you know, I wonder how often, and yesterday we were in the park, or Sunday we were in the park, and I said to my husband, can you imagine how often that happens? Like a squirrel or a bird, they plant it and they're like, this is my stash for winter. And then they come back and there's a plant there and they're like, where's my acorn? And that sucker grew fast. Let me tell you, it was coming in hot. So I don't know, like you could plant something and come back 2 weeks later and like you've got like a plant this big. I'm not joking. That thing was big. Anyway, that's where we are. Growing 3 oak trees. Injection is done. I'm doing better with my sleep. Thank you. And That's the end of that tune. I hope wherever you are that you have a low pain, no pain, low aggravation, no aggravation kind of a day, kind of a week, and kind of a weekend to come. That's what we hope for. That's what we deserve. That is what I truly wish for each and every one of you. I will see you for the blog on Friday and next week for everything else. Have a good afternoon. Bye.